Hey guys, Sean from Srkcycles, and we are with a 2013 Yamaha V-Star Deluxe. Cue the intro. Here I'm with the 80 cubic inch Yamaha V-Star 1300 Deluxe. And this is very similar to what you'd see with just the 1300 Tour, except for there'd be no front fairing, there'd be a windshield, and instead of plastic bags that are wrapped in some type of vinyl leather, you've got actual hard wrapped painted bags. They're pretty much the same bag, except for it kind of kicks out a little bit on the side. But they're huge, tons of space. Now the biggest obvious difference is the fairing. And you also notice that when I'm sitting on the bike, this is kind of a slimmed down, chopped down version of a fairing. So if I'm sitting on a Harley Ultra Classic, the fairing would come up to here, and then the windshield comes up higher. Now a lot of these have a windshield that would come up a little bit higher, but the whole fairing is completely under me. And honestly, I kind of like that, because you kind of miss something when you're riding a full fairing bike, because all you see is this. You don't get to see anything down here. This is kind of it's a lower chopped down version of the fairing, but it works. It covers my hands, and if I wanted more up here, I get a windshield. So this thing is a 5-speed, 80 cubic inch, water cooled, single rear shock, weighing in at 717 pounds. 717 represent. That's the phone code around here. Surprisingly, when I heard that this thing weighed 717 pounds, I was actually kind of blown away. I thought it'd be more like 650, because it actually feels really light. But it's only about 60 pounds lighter than the Harley Davidson equivalent, which I'm very surprised about that. So I'll talk more about this in the actual test drive. But I do love this feature. The GPS just kind of pops out. This is the Zumo unit, Garmin Zumo. And you could have this mounted somewhere in your car. It's very similar to what BMW does with their motorcycles. And then if you wanted to, you could upgrade this to a newer unit. It pops in. So if you're going to the movies or something like that, bam, pop it out, stick it in your pocket. No one's going to steal your stuff. And it's upgradable. Here's your controls for the music. And the one slightly goofy thing about it is, and maybe it's kind of a cool thing, but it's really hard to find the key unless you know where it's at. You reach your hand down in here. That's how you turn the key on and off. Honestly, if I was riding this bike, I would probably just leave the key in there, because you can't see it. Because this is all shielded from the sun, you can't see it. Just make sure no one's looking. Or they assume you have the key in your hand, turn it on. 4.9 gallon fuel tank. It really is a great bike. It's a comfortable bike. Let's go do the test drive. All right, guys, before the test drive, let's do the words of wisdom. We got a long one. Joshua 24:15. If it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourself today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your father served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in the land which you are living. But for as me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Amen. You're serving someone. You're naive if you're not. All right, let's do this. Zip up my M1 Moto gloves. It is a beautiful rainy day. This bike has 2,600 miles on it. So a couple things I do before I go out in the rain, if I know I'm going to go out in the rain. One of those things is I put Rain-X not just on, I'm going to get wet today. I put Rain-X not just on my camera, but also on the shield. So hopefully it beads off and kind of flies a different way. I remember the first time I rode one of these bikes, and I was like, man, this is such a big improvement above the V-Star 1100. It's just a big bike. It's got a lot of room to it. I mean, you can see how I'm 6'2". I feel really spaced out on it, and you could be much bigger than me and feel like you have plenty of room. It also had a lot of good power, which of course I like power. Now this thing, I really do like this. I like this design. This is kind of what BMW does with their bikes, where you can pop that out, take that little Zumo thing out, and you can stick it in your car, or stick it, or possibly upgrade it, or you could stick it in your pocket when you go to the movies, so no one steals it. Now obviously you can't steal it out of a Harley Davidson easily, but this is upgradable, and you could change it. I like that, you know, because after a while, after 15, let's say, hey, you know what, motorcycles last a long time. The one bike in my little motorcycle collection is a 1968. Let's say the bike lasts that long. If that thing had a GPS, it would look like Pong. You know what I mean? It would be horrible. So I like the idea of having an upgradable GPS. It also has a radio, and the radio is played through there. And there's also, I think there's an aux cord somewhere. Don't quote me on that one. I think somewhere you could plug in an aux cord. Maybe, I don't know. Oh, there's something with here. There's a thing right here. Yeah, somewhere you plug in something. Let me see if I can read that. So I like the power. I like the power of these bikes. They're fun. They're light. It's just a good ride, and they're incredibly. I don't want to use the word cheap, but they're priced really cheap. It's not a cheap bike, it's not a cheap quality bike, but they are inexpensive. So if you wanted to get into a bike, you know, that had a full fairing, that had hard bags, had radio, had GPS, no cruise control, you can get into it for, you know, less than $7,000 easily, and it would have low miles and be reliable and just be a lot of fun. It'd be a great bike for you. The one thing I've always had an issue with this bike, and this is a belt-driven bike, but it's not because it's belt-driven. It likes, you see, like right there. See how it's kind of doing that? It likes the higher RPMs. And it's just something you kind of get used to. You just get used to knowing what RPMs it wants to be into. But from riding other bikes, sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to, you know, oh, I'll shift here. Or I'll go into a corner and I'm in third gear, and normally I can just grunt out of it. On this bike, you want to downshift. You want to be in maybe second gear or just a lower gear, because for some reason the way the engine is and the transmission just likes, it's got more of its power at mid and top end, and it just likes to be in a slightly higher gear. So when you first jump on it, you're like, oh, this is kind of, if you're used to, depending on what you're used to driving before, if you're used to driving I don't know, just some big high horsepower bike that you're just used to just thumping out, you know, where honestly you could be in fifth gear the whole time and just come to an almost stop, and you're just like thump, you're just gonna thump it out. It might take a little bit getting used to. For me, it takes about, I don't know, 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just keep it in a higher gear. You know, kind of like what a sport bike would be. Not that big of a deal. But I think this is a real clean and simple way that, so this is not to replace, you know, like a venture, you know, touring bike or anything like that. But it's just to say, hey, there's a lot of people that like the V-Star 1300. Let's put a fairing in a GPS mount. Let's make it look cleaner than putting a Batwing on it. Let's make it look lighter, you know, than putting a Batwing on it. Let's put some cool hardbacks. One of the problems that the VTX 1300 Tour had with these soft bags is if you didn't condition them, they would tear at the seams because they would kind of contract from the heat and the cold. So they needed to be conditioned, because what they were wrapped. It was a plastic bag that was wrapped in leather, so it had the look of leather, but it was still stiff, so it wouldn't, like, you know, kind of cave in like you see on the Heritage Softails. So this bike has plenty of power. Fun to ride. It'd be a good highway bike, be a good bike for cruising. If you're gonna do a big trip, it'd be a good bike if you're just, you know, just day to day, just gonna ride to your friend's house. Not too heavy, not too cumbersome. They're also very simple. It's a very simple setup. You only have a few buttons, not too much to deal with, and not too much to break. I've had a bunch of these. I've never had any issues with any of them. Now, obviously, some of them break something. I'm sure something on these things break. I don't know what it is. But there is no common issue that a lot of these things have. I've never seen one of these things leak any oil. So if you're looking for a good, reliable bike with a fairing that you can just, all right, I'm gonna buy it, I'm gonna ride it, that's it. I don't have to maintain it, or, yeah, I mean, you have to maintain everything, but I don't have to, you know, this is not a big upkeep on it. This could absolutely be the bike for you. All right, guys, that wraps up the test drive. This bike and I don't know, 50, 60, 70 other bikes are for sale on Srkcycles.com. We do ship all over the country and sometimes all over the world. If you're looking for the baddest motorcycle gloves out there, these are actually lined with Kevlar. They cost us a lot of money to make, but we're not selling them for that much money. Check out the link below. They're at bikesandbeardsgear.com. We'll see you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe. Remember, it's not what you're riding, but where you going.